Your avoidant ex will not see this coming. Take your power back. Let me tell you something that might sting before it sets you free. Your avoidant ex isn't going to wake up one day, call you and say, I finally realized I've been emotionally unavailable and I'm ready to love you the way you deserve. That's not how this works. But here's what is going to happen, and it's something they will not see coming. You're going to stop chasing them. You're going to stop trying to decode their every breadcrumb. You're going to stop trying to be less so they feel more, because the most powerful move you can make isn't to wait for someone to come back. It's to step into the life they were never ready for. And here's the kicker. People with avoidant tendencies aren't afraid of love. They're afraid of intimacy. They're terrified of being truly seen in the moment. You stop trying to win them over. You become the mirror they can't avoid. That's when your silence becomes the loudest sound in the room. This isn't about revenge. It's about realignment. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you refuse to audition for someone who's not even watching the show. So how do you take your power back? You fell in love with who they could be, not who they consistently were. That's the trap. When you're emotionally invested in someone with avoidant tendencies, it's easy to focus on their best moments. The times they were charming, attentive, and maybe even vulnerable. You hold on to those glimpses like gold, thinking they reveal who they really are underneath the distance. But here's the truth. Consistency is more important than potential. Anyone can show up for a moment. It's who shows up consistently that determines whether a relationship has real, lasting value. Avoidant partners often leave you in a state of confusion. One day they're affectionate, open, and giving, just enough to keep hope alive. The next they're withdrawn, vague, or emotionally unavailable. And because you're wired to believe in love, you start filling in the blanks. You tell yourself they're just scared, or they need time, or if I just love them a little more, they'll come around. But here's the problem. When you do that, you stop seeing what's actually happening and start living in a fantasy of what might happen. You're not weak for wanting it to work. You're human. You saw something beautiful and thought maybe with enough love, this could grow. But hoping for someone to change while they're actively showing you that they're not willing or able to is self-abandonment. It's like standing in front of a locked door and saying, I just need to knock harder. No, sometimes the door is closed for a reason. The idea that this person is capable of being the ideal partner lives more in your imagination than in real life. If you're being honest, the relationship was filled with more uncertainty than security, more questions than answers, more anxiety than peace. And that's not love, that's survival mode. You are constantly adapting to their mood, overthinking your every move, trying to be less needy so they wouldn't pull away. That's not connection, that's contortion. When you start to accept that their inconsistency wasn't a glitch but the norm, you stop waiting for the real version of them to show up. You realize the real version already did, and it wasn't enough. Not because you're too much, but because they couldn't meet you where you are. That realization might hurt at first, but it's the beginning of true clarity. Clarity that allows you to stop investing in someone's potential and start protecting your peace. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop allowing someone else's inconsistent behavior to control your emotional world. When you're entangled with an avoidant ex, you're often in a cycle of highs and lows, waiting for the next text, trying to decode silence, questioning your worth every time they pull away. That dynamic isn't love, it's addiction to validation, and the only way to break it is by stepping back far enough to see it for what it really is. Detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. It's the choice to stop making excuses for someone who can't show up for you. You've likely spent so much time trying to be patient, to understand their past, to be the exception that changes everything for them. You believed if you could just prove your loyalty, they'd finally feel safe enough to open up. But emotional availability doesn't come from pressure, it comes from personal readiness. And no amount of love or loyalty on your part can force someone to meet you at a level they're not prepared for. When you detach, you're not giving up on love. You're reclaiming your sense of control. You're saying, I deserve a relationship where I don't have to chase reassurance. I deserve to feel seen, heard, and chosen. Detachment is the quiet strength of walking away from what confuses you instead of staying and calling it passion. It's choosing peace over chaos. You stop reacting to their silence and start responding to your own need. That shift alone is life-changing. People with avoidant tendencies often rely on your emotional investment to keep the connection alive without having to fully commit. They want to feel desired, but they fear being depended on. They don't want you to leave, but they can't fully let you in, so they do just enough to keep the door cracked open. When you detach, you close that door, not to be spiteful, but to protect your energy. You no longer feed the cycle. You no longer chase after clarity in places that only offer confusion. This is when the power dynamic shifts. You stop being the one who's waiting, hoping, and proving. You become the one who chooses, not because you need to, but because you can. Detachment teaches you that you don't have to fix someone to feel worthy of love. You just have to choose someone who doesn't make you question it. And sometimes the first person you need to choose is yourself. When you've spent so much of your energy trying to figure someone else out, wondering why they're hot one moment and cold the next, constantly walking on eggshells so you don't push them away, it's easy to lose sight of yourself. Your thoughts, your emotions, your plans slowly become secondary to what they're doing or not doing. That's what an avoidant dynamic can do. It pulls your focus away from your own life and redirects it entirely onto someone who's not even fully present. Shifting the focus back to you isn't just a healing step, it's a power move. The truth is, the version of you that was obsessed with their every text, mood, and reaction is not your final form. That version was in survival mode, trying to make sense of inconsistent love. When you've been stuck in a pattern of emotional deprivation, even crumbs can feel like a feast. But once you realize you've been starving for real connection, you understand why it's time to sit at a new table. One where you're fed emotionally and spiritually. And to get there, you have to start nourishing yourself first. Start by asking yourself a question you probably haven't in a long time. What do I want? Not what will make them come back. Not what will make you more likable to someone else. What do you want for your life, your career, your friendships, your happiness? What makes you feel alive when no one else is around? Those parts of you didn't disappear. You just put them on hold while trying to win someone else's approval. Take your attention off the unread messages and pour that same energy into your goals. Sign up for the class, take the trip, rekindle the hobbies you shelved while you were busy shrinking yourself for a relationship that couldn't hold you. Spend time with people who pour into you, not those who drain you. Every time you choose yourself, you're rewriting the narrative that told you love has to be earned through sacrifice. The irony is, the more you build a life you're proud of, the less interested you'll be in whether they notice. Their opinion starts to matter less when you're living in alignment with your worth. And that's when real self-confidence is born, not from their validation, but from your own daily choices. Recentering your focus on yourself is not selfish, it's the foundation of all healthy relationships. When you know who you are, you miss you, and you're living like it, the right people don't feel like a chase, they feel like home. There's a moment often late at night when your heart is heavy and your pride is quiet, when you're tempted to send that one last text, the one that says, I miss you, or I just want to understand, or worse, can we try again? You're not looking for a casual conversation. You're looking for resolution, for relief, for something that makes all the confusion make sense. But here's the truth. That text rarely brings peace. More often than not, it reopens a wound you are finally starting to heal. You think you're sending a message that says, I care, but what you're really doing is saying, I'm still waiting for you to choose me. And someone with avoidant tendencies picks up on that energy immediately. They don't respond to emotional openness with closeness. They respond with distance. The more you lean in, the more they pull away. That dynamic doesn't change just because you say the right words. It only changes when you stop playing the game altogether. The most powerful message you can send isn't a perfectly crafted paragraph. It's your absence. It's your silence. It's you choosing to stop explaining your feelings to someone who never made the effort to understand them in the first place. People notice when your energy shifts, especially when they were used to being at the center of it. When the texts stop, when the calls stop, when the overthinking stops. That's when your message lands loud and clear. I'm no longer available for inconsistent love. And the thing is, you don't have to say it out loud. You don't need to announce your boundaries. You live them. You embody them. You stop checking their social media. You stop asking mutual friends for updates. You stop living in emotional debt, hoping that someday they'll pay it back. Every time you choose not to reach out, not to chase closure, not to re-explain your worth, you're telling the universe and yourself that you are done settling for half love. This kind of strength is quiet but undeniable. It doesn't scream or beg or plead. It just exits the room and builds something better elsewhere. You become the person who no longer needs their attention to feel validated. That's when the power shifts. That's when your actions speak volumes. Not because you're trying to teach them a lesson, but because you finally learnt your own. You don't need to send a text. You are the message. Silence is not weakness. It's not avoidance, revenge, or a manipulation tactic. When used with intention, silence is strength. It's the sound of someone who has finally stopped begging to be understood. In relationships with avoidant partners, you've likely over-explained, over-apologized, and over-assumptioned. You try to bridge the emotional gap by talking more, doing more, and staying available, thinking that eventually something would click, that one day your consistency would earn you their clarity. But it never quite happened, did it? The thing about silence is that it cuts through noise. When someone is used to you always being there, responding, reaching out, showing up, no matter how inconsistently they did, it sends a powerful signal when you finally stop. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. That silence doesn't scream. It doesn't argue. It doesn't try to convince. It just creates space. And in that space, truth surfaces. Avoidant partners often rely on emotional chaos to maintain distance. They don't have to fully commit if the relationship is always in limbo. Your silence removes that chaos. It takes away the push-pull dynamic they've grown comfortable with. It puts a stop to the back and forth energy exchange and creates a stillness they can't distract themselves from. That stillness forces reflection, not necessarily transformation, but at the very least, awareness. And that's more than any text or speech could accomplish. But here's where your focus needs to be. Not on whether they notice your silence, but on what it allows you to reclaim. When you're no longer checking your phone every few minutes or rehearsing what you'll say, if they finally reach out, you begin to reconnect with yourself. You get to breathe again. You get to hear your own thoughts instead of drowning in theirs. Silence becomes your sanctuary. It becomes the place where your confidence is rebuilt. You don't need to announce your boundaries. You just live them. And when you stop responding to inconsistency, when you stop filling the silence with apologies or justifications, you start to remember what it feels like to be grounded. You realize you don't have to chase anyone to feel whole. That's when your silence transforms from emptiness into presence. It stops being about their reaction and starts being about your peace. Sometimes the most profound closure comes not from a conversation, but from your decision to walk away quietly with your head high, your dignity intact, and your attention firmly turned back toward your own life. Because when you stop speaking to someone who couldn't hear you in the first place, you finally start hearing yourself. So here you are at the turning point. You've given your energy, your heart, your patience, and maybe even your sense of self to someone who couldn't hold it with care. But this is where that story ends. Not with bitterness, not with blame, but with truth, power, and clarity. You now understand that it's not your job to fix, prove, or wait. It's your responsibility to choose yourself, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, and especially when someone else refuses to. Taking your power back doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like quietly rebuilding a life so solid, no emotionally unavailable person could ever shake it again. This isn't about making them regret losing you. It's about making sure you never again lose yourself in the process of loving someone else. Because when you finally rise into your full worth, when you protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is, that avoidant ex won't know what hit them. They'll look back and realize they never even scratched the surface of the person you've become. You don't have to show them. You don't have to wait for them to notice. You just have to live so fully, so confidently, and so unapologetically that you see it. And that's the only closure you'll ever need. Thank you for sharing your time, your attention, and your heart today. Whether you're still healing, just beginning, or already on the other side, know this: you're not alone, and your growth is unstoppable. Keep choosing peace, keep choosing strength, keep choosing you. Take care of yourself, and remember, your next chapter starts the moment you say, I'm done settling for less. Until next time, go alive like you never needed their permission. Thank you.